GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is episode 131.
Episode 131, people. And I'm going to preface this by saying, per the host of this podcast, Mr. Ryan Wolfe, I am flying blind on this one now. I did not read the notes. I did not read anything about the show. I know the Buffalo Bills beat the royal crap out of the Vegas Raiders. That's all I know. I don't know anything about this, so I'm just going to be in the dark as you listeners out there right now.
Well, until the rundown is over, once you hear the story that I wanted to mention to you, because I want to get your unfiltered thoughts on it, I don't want you to have a second to think about it without being recorded. Then you can pop it up. But this is the Buffalo Bills versus the Las Vegas Raiders. You can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Make sure to hit that subscribe button as well to stay up to date on the latest podcast. I am Ryan Wolfe, my co-host, John Cimino. John, you mentioned it. The Bills defeat the Las Vegas Raiders 38-10. Great news. The Bills will not go winless this season. Not that anybody predicted that, but
I can't imagine anybody in their right frame of mind thinking that would have been any sort of possibility.
That fear has been put to bed. Buffalo finds themselves getting the offense back on track while the defense picked up where they left off last Monday night against the Jets. It's the third consecutive win for the Buffalo Bills against the Raiders, the franchise's longest winning streak versus the Raiders, including the playoffs, since a 4-game streak from 1988 to 1991. Now, John, the story that I've been waiting to get to.
Okay.
On Sunday, a call came in at 12:18 p.m. A 29-year-old male jumped the fence at the new stadium construction site and fell into the construction pit. Now, mind you, he was naked, covered in human feces, or as we like to call it, poo, and under the influence of drugs and alcohol.
Never change, Buffalo.
Again, 12:18 p.m. on Sunday. Could you please refresh the listeners what time kickoff was on Sunday?
Pretty sure kickoff was at 1:05 p.m.
1 o'clock on the nose
game.
And the dude was naked, covered in poo, drunk and high in the pit. Like Bills, not only are Bills games built different, Bills home openers are built different because now they're going to have like police enforcement around the fence to make sure no other idiots. I'm sure if the guy, I haven't heard anything. So if the guy is injured bad or whatever, certainly not trying to be insensitive, just more of a questioning nature.
I'll be insensitive all you want. Like, you have to understand, regardless of what state of intoxication you're in, whatever the drug of choice or libation of choice you choose to be in, there has to be some part of your brain that says this may not be the best idea. I'm gonna go through with it anyways, but this may not be the best idea.
I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we do have a very action-packed podcast today. But I just got to say, John, I've never been to that point in my life where I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get butt-ass naked, poop all over myself, and hop a fence.
Never change. Never
John,
change.
John, could I get a yeah on that one, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't even understand what's going on, man.
I've always said, and I've said it on this very podcast, Ryan. I've said it to you directly on and off the air. It's not a gimmick. I am a Jets fan, but my God, would I love to party,
dude! You are the
Bills Mafia.
Even more so when the Bills don't play the Jets, you are Bills Mafia's favorite Jets fan, and you are more than welcome.
I would love to party with, but even I don't like. I've had, and Ryan, I'm a pro wrestler. I've had my share of some things, okay, and I've been, certain degrees of intoxicated more than I should have, but usually like. those instances like translate into like I wake up the next morning and I'm like, oh God, what was I thinking? This one's not a 10, or something like that, right? Like mine was, I get like the beer goggles part, right? But like to actually like defecate on yourself and then
imagine drinking enough that you think you're a mixture of Nick Wallenda and Evel Knievel.
I don't like
with poop.
That is a special kind of like either this person was so far gone from reality, from the planet Earth, that they had no idea what was going on, or maybe subconsciously they thought they would get viral and they got exactly what they wanted.
They're going to get viral, John, from all the poop on them.
Oh, yeah, they're going to get something.
What drug, real quick before we move on here, what drug do you have to do to cover yourself in your own poop? Meth?
Marriage to the wrong person.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's
that's my story. I'm sticking to that
closet favorite right there. But with that being said, again, we certainly hope that the man
was that what I shouldn't have looked at the outline for? Can I look at the outline?
You're good to go now.
I can look at the outline now.
Yeah, you're absolutely good.
Yeah. All right,
dummy. Yeah, I don't even watch WWE, but I know LA Knight because he is transcendent. He is becoming a big superstar in the world of entertainment. But
the thing with LA Knight for wrestling fans out there is he's been around for a very long time. Did you know he was in fact the last person that Percy Pringle, aka Paul Bearer, managed?
Did you know that? I don't think I feel like I heard something about that, but I don't recall. So I'm just going to say no.
He managed him in what is now known as Impact Wrestling, back when it was called TNA. And LA Knight's name at that time was Eli Drake.
Just go on TikTok and type in LA Knight and you'll see old commercials, old TV spots, everything with LA Knight. But
okay,
I'm moving over to the three big things. I'm hyped up. I was letting LA Knight get me hyped up, man. The three big things brought to you by puckluck.com, your one-stop resource for all of your NHL sports betting action. Puckluck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? Not to worry. Puckluck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Please note, puckluck.com, no way affiliated with the National Hockey League. Its teams are the NHLPA. Puckluck.com provides data related to gambling. Cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. Please gamble responsibly. John, dissecting the offense, our first of the three big things this week. Josh Allen. We always start off with Josh Allen, no matter the case, because as we've talked about last week, and we're going to talk about this week, the Buffalo Bills live and die by number 17 under center. Josh Allen, 31 of 37, passing 274 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, no turnovers, and 3 rushes for 7 yards. Now, he being Josh Allen, tied a career high with 13 straight completions, which he also completed on October 16th, 2022, at Kansas City. I need to stop doing this. I put dates instead of like spelling it out, because then I see 10, 16, 22. And my first thought is, well, what is 10? I don't remember.
It's October, Ryan.
Clearly I'm an idiot. Allen's 83.8 completion percentage was also the second highest in team history, and Allen's highest since the 2022 season opener against the Rams on September 8th, 2022, where he accomplished an 83.9% completion percentage. Now, John, last week we laid the blame on Josh Allen fully, but the man deserves his flowers. That's becoming one of my favorite sayings lately. The man deserves his flowers. It was his 5th career game with 3 passing touchdowns while completing at least 80% of his passes. The 5 games of 3 passing touchdowns and at least an 80% completion rate or completion percentage are the most prior to turning 30 in NFL history. No one's done it more than Josh Allen has, right?
Right.
Also, we talked about how Josh Allen leads the NFL in turnovers since 2018. We did that last week. But we failed to mention, this is my fault, taking the good with the bad with the good. Josh Allen leads the NFL in offensive touchdowns with 133 combined touchdowns since 2020. Also, Buffalo moves to 22-4 overall when Josh Allen has no turnovers. So again, Josh Allen, calmed himself down, went back to the get the ball in the hands of the people who matter the most, let them do the work, matriculate the ball downfield and watch what happens.
Yeah, and I think that feeds the point we were making last week where it's kind of all or nothing for Josh Allen, where he's either really, really good or really, really terrible, and there's not really an in-between, it seems. This fed that narrative completely. He was smart. I would say he was smart with the ball, although he made a dive in the game when he was running for extra yards, or he jumped up and dove. This after he said, I just have to be smarter with the ball and whatever. And then he goes and he freaking runs for like 15 yards and then tries to dive over somebody and gets hit.
Context there, John. There. That guy he tried to jump over was one of his very good friends at Wyoming when they went to college together. So I have to presume he decided, hey, I'm going to clown on this guy, because as you see, if you watch the replay, that defender had the chance to ruin Josh Allen's day and helped kind of gently place him on the ground.
Yeah, but
so it was again, you can't do that. You don't do that.
It can be. I see that point. I'll see that point, and I'll raise you the business side of it. What if in a world full of hypotheticals and everybody loves to play the what if game? What if?
Yeah.
What if he came down, landed wrong? What if he came down and, busted his hand or something, right? Like just clowning around, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like, it's cool to clown around and to play and be human and whatever. And certainly if you feel as an individual, Josh Allen obviously felt, I could probably get away with this and do this, right? You trust his judgment there, but in the same,
that's how every good story starts. I can
right,
get away with this.
but in the same, like, on the off chance that just something horrendously went wrong, because you can't predict when things happen. Things, you can be as prepared as you want, but if things happen, being an athlete myself, I certainly didn't plan a year ago when I did an elbow drop off the top rope to get back up and then take a pivot and then go down like a sack of bricks and lose 9 months out of my comeback journey to wrestling. These things happen. So you got to kind of think about it like that. Like, yes, it's cool to clown around and think, but clown around smart, get up, smack his ass or something, kind of thing, or talk trash like the old NBA, greats used to do with one another, talk trash on the court and stuff like that. But like when it comes to something like that, especially being who you are to this franchise, and again, regardless of how well James Cook played and how well Diggs played and all of that stuff, I still stand firm and firmly believe that if Josh Allen is not behind center, the Buffalo Bills are not who they are. So that's a very, very big like risk to take in the name of just clowning around and having fun.
And I'm not saying this to be a homer, because we have seen the Cincinnati Bengals struggle the first 2 games of the season with Joe Burrow under center.
Right. Remember though, folks, it's only week 2.
But he also re-aggravated his calf injury, which not great, but I digress. But looking at it, I do agree with you on that one, because it does seem like, I mean, it's hard to say, really. I do believe, because it sounds like a homer pick to say, well, yeah, Josh Allen is the most valuable player to his team, like to his offense. But we've seen how Kansas City performs without Patrick Mahomes. And now, don't get me wrong, don't come with the pitchforks. This is where I'm going with this. Better coaching. Andy Reid is much smarter and more able to tailor a game plan to a lesser quarterback or to a lesser player.
Right.
I don't necessarily
Chad Henne.
I don't
recently.
necessarily know that Cincinnati is that way, but also Cincinnati has a boatload of weapons, a decent offensive line. They've got Joe Mixon in the backfield, and they've got a pretty strong damn defense that if they need to make up for Joe Burrow, which, hey, we may see that this week or for a few weeks, depending on how his calf muscle heals back up. But again, it's I just guess I don't have a lot of confidence in Kyle Allen.
I guess, yeah, when you're that valuable to a franchise and your coaching as is has quite a few question marks. We've talked about the coaching I don't want to say repeatedly, but on and off, since the off season. We've talked about the gaps in the coaching and how they're going to tailor to Leslie Frazier being out. How's McDermott going to do that? We kind of talked about Ken Dorsey a little bit last week and how unprepared he seemed to be, and when you have that, like, for me, as the outsider looking in, Josh Allen is the heart and soul and lifeblood of that offense. I do not think, and we see teams where they have weapons around them. Look at the New York Jets. Their offensive line is atrocious, but they have key position players in the wide receiver, tight end, running back space. They should be competing regardless of whether or not Aaron Rodgers is there, but they don't have a competent offensive line. They don't have a competent quarterback on top of that behind him. So they're going to struggle. If the Buffalo Bills, and granted, their offensive line is good, but the quarterback competency is very, very, it's always something you hear about. You always hear about the quarterbacks. That's why they're always picked first. That's why they're always the highest paid player in NFL history. That's always why it's resetting the bar with every quarterback contract, right? Because there is no substitute for competent quarterback play and competent quarterbacks in the room. And when you don't have that behind your QB1, it doesn't matter who you have on that team. There will be your road to victory may not be as easy as it would be with QB1 and his competency level there. So that's why I'm saying I don't think the Buffalo Bills are like the Kansas City Chiefs, where they have competent enough coaching to tailor to a Kyle Allen from a Josh Allen. I don't know that they have that. We saw with Kansas City, I think it was last season or the season before, I can't remember. But when Mahomes went down and they had to transition into Chad Henne, they were able to, the coaching staff was able to tailor down to Chad Henne's style, but Chad Henne also had the experience of being a journeyman in the league for 15 years, to where he kind of understood where he needed to go and how he needed to do it. Some of these QB 2s and 3s that are behind some of these ones, and I'm not just saying Buffalo, but just in general, like, you don't even know if they'd make a USFL or XFL team. And yet they're there. So it's kind of hard. I think I would feel a lot more confident if there were, I don't know, if they were like a Matt Barkley or a Sam Darnold, or
if actually, they had I'm literally just looking up a list. I just literally Googled list of NFL backup quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. If you had Andy Dalton, a Jacoby Brissett, a Taylor Heineke,
right? Yeah, something like one of those names. Like, I think that they would be okay. But when you have like a Kyle Allen, or who's the other one behind him? Who's QB3? Is there even
oh
QB3?
God, there's a guy they got from Kansas City. Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but like, those guys they're not going to move the needle. You may coast enough to get to the playoffs, but like Houston that one year when they had Deshaun Watson and they were doing all good. And then Deshaun Watson, I don't know, whatever happened to him. He got, I don't know, he had his balloon nut touched or something. I don't know, but maybe he was injured. I have no idea, but he wasn't there. And there was a backup. I can't remember who it was, maybe Davis Webb or somebody like that was quarterbacking the Texans home game that they earned. And then they got blown out they got beat by the Bills. If I remember correctly in that game, maybe, I don't know.
I'm reading how to pronounce this guy's name. It's Shane Buckley. Yeah, Buckley.
Buckley?
Shane Buckley.
Is it Buckley or Buckley?
Buechle. He's
Buckley.
3 years in the league. He was with Kansas City. Matt Barkley may come back. I know Matt Barkley's got an elbow injury, but again, I digress.
Right. But the main point is as QB1, knowing
you have to be smart. You have to take care of yourself. It's it's September.
Mercifully, it did not go, horrid, but there's the possibility. And I say this now because of what happened last week with the Jets, but there's a possibility that it could, and you can't really plan for those. So you got to kind of, be smart with it, knowing that the Buffalo Bills, even though they won this game and they won big and they should have, and they played a little more like themselves, you're chasing a Miami Dolphins team now that has a chip on their shoulder. that heard all of this talk about Buffalo, and then all of the talk about the New York Jets, and everybody forgot about them, right? And so they're using that as motivation. They just beat the Patriots. They're 2-0. They're, it's right now, it's them in the lead and Buffalo's chasing them. I don't think the Jets are going to sniff it, but that's a different story for a different podcast. You got to be smart if you're Buffalo in this, because Miami is not the Dolphins that they were 2 or 3 years ago when you guys were ascending.
Well, here's another thing, too, that will allow Josh Allen to kind of take a step back and relax a bit. And speaking of giving someone their flowers, running back James Cook played the best game of his young NFL career on Sunday. 17 carries for 123 yards with 4 receptions on 4 targets for 36 yards. His 123 rushing yards and 159 all-purpose yards are both a career high. Cook's 123 rushing yards are the most by a Bill since Josh Allen recorded 135 rushing yards on 9 carries against Miami on December 2nd, 2018. Now, Cook looked good against the Jets, but again, the Jets defense held him down because that's what the Jets defense does. But now, looking at the performance, I mean, yeah, again, it was a blowout, but James Cook was showing what he showed in the Jets game. The ability to make that first cut and then accelerate upfield.
And that is something that's largely been missing from Buffalo for years in the running back position. And that gives Josh Allen that break to rest his legs and stay in the pocket a little bit more, or if he has to get out of the pocket, he can extend the play and look to get the ball out of his hands instead of taking off downfield, which is what he's had to do. So I'm sure that when these stats were compiled at the end of the game and the coach was giving the post-game speech and everything, and they heard, Cook, 17 for 123, four receptions, 4 targets. You know what he was saying? Yeah. And
you're not wrong about that.
And he was happy about that. That's what's been missing for Buffalo for a while. So consistency is going to be key there. I'll be curious to see if, as they move forward and they play tougher defenses again, which side of James Cook are we going to see? Are we going to see week 1 when he plays against a solid top 5 defense, or are we going to see this week when he plays against a defense that it's not top 5, but it's certainly not the worst. It's certainly top 10.
And we'll talk about the other 2 running backs here later on in the segment, but yeah, James Cook has responded appropriately. First off, to his inability to trust what he sees the offensive line giving him. It looked like last year he was more apt to bouncing out of the backfield and trying to run on the outside, run to the sideline, then run up. Doesn't work like that in the NFL unless you have plus speed. But Cook still looks very dynamic in that backfield. He's able to make that first cut and hit the hole, and that's exactly what the Bills need. But there's also there's more to the story that, like I said, we'll talk about in just a minute. But wide receiver Stephon Diggs, the last player that we're going to highlight offensively in this portion of the segment. 7 receptions on 7 targets for 66 yards. This is important because Diggs surpassed Thurman Thomas for 6th most receiving yards in team history. Thomas sits at 4,341 yards. Diggs ended Sunday's game with 4,357 receiving yards as a Buffalo Bill.
Can I go on a small soapbox after you finish your sentence? I'm sorry.
Sure. Next on the list, Frank Lewis, wide receiver from 78 to 83. He has 4,638 receiving yards. So Stephon Diggs has the top 5 in Bills history within his grasp at this point.
Absolutely. And here's my small soapbox to a very small segment of you Buffalo Bills fans. Shut up about Steph Diggs. Literally, I cannot, for the life of me, I cannot fathom why so many people I've encountered recently are quick to put the diva label on him and are quick to talk about how he's not about the team. And all this guy does is grind and get his team focused. You see him yelling at Josh Allen, but it's not like he's demeaning him. He's getting him focused. You could read his lips where he's like, get your head in the game. Let's go. Let's do this. We got this. And he's pumping up his team. And I don't understand for the life of me why a small segment of you look at Diggs and think that for some reason he's bringing the team down with antics. He's not. He's pumping them up. I would love to have Steph Diggs on my team. And I'm not saying that as a football fan. If I were a fan of any other team and Steph Diggs was available, I'd want him. because you want that type of leadership on the team. I get that the story that came out over the playoffs, and you saw Steph Diggs kind of say this or whatever, like he was obviously frustrated or whatever, but the dude is a freaking gamer. He's there, he's interacting with fans all the time, not even just Bills fans, but fans in general. You always see him at every game throwing the ball to and from people in the crowd, regardless of what shirts they're wearing. He makes time for the kids. He does good on the field. He stays out of trouble off of it. Like, what more could you possibly want from a guy that's a leader on your team? Like,
call me
I'm
crazy,
sorry,
John, but when your own media team is caught on a hot mic talking about how awful of a person he supposedly is, it doesn't really help the narrative. Which that was a big mistake.
Yeah, that was on their part, but again, that could be subjective. That could be subjective to that one person in the media.
But when it comes out from one Bills drive and it's from a Bills employee, it's not good. That would be like you or I going to work and talking junk about one of our coworkers, no matter how good or bad or indifferent that they are. Mm-hmm. It's not a good look. But
no, right, I get that.
I also think that if the Buffalo Bills don't win the Super Bowl this year, somebody's gonna have to take the fall, and I'm getting that feeling like unless Stephon Diggs has lights out the greatest season of his career, I don't necessarily think that he. I don't know if I want to say this right now.
You think they would sunset? They would sunset the Steph Diggs in this
with how much they've been pushing the narrative that he's the problem. Yeah,
yeah. So this is the way I see. I feel like, as I could see it go multiple ways here with this one. Personally, for me, I'm choosing to believe the team player, the guy that wants to win in Buffalo, right? That's what I want to believe. But it would not surprise me if at the end of the season, if the Buffalo Bills were not to win the Super Bowl, or even if they were, I could see a situation in which, okay, we either got what we want or we didn't get what we want. I think it's time to move on from the noise. I could see that happening. I don't know that I would jump immediately to Diggs, though, especially if they, immediately. I could see them probably taking a lesser like guy that is still beloved and still, like Gabe Davis, for example, right? Not that Gabe Davis gives anyone any trouble whatsoever, right? But in comparison to Steph Diggs, he's the number 2. He's not a number 1. So I could see maybe they shop around and move some pieces that may not be the marquee names just to see. But in every instance I've seen of that, they've always moved the wrong person.
Sure.
And if they leave like the superstar tandem together, and one of the superstars was the problem, and then they move a supporting piece that could be the next superstar, it almost ends up working like the worst for them. So this offseason, for sure, piggybacking off of our very first podcast of this season, a preseason one we did, where we said there's going to be a lot to dissect with this Buffalo Bills team after this season, regardless of how they do. I think we're in for some sort of transition. I just don't know where it is yet, but I wouldn't necessarily put everything on Diggs right now.
I would not disagree with that, but I also, like I said, I've been doing this game for a couple minutes now, and you can read the writing on the wall.
Right.
And that's the media, the local Buffalo media. They love their narratives, and we know that is
they
probably
really do, though.
The first spot they're going to go is, well, Stephon Diggs this, Stephon Diggs that.
Yep.
Which it's unfortunate, but
yeah.
Putting a bow on the offense here. Buffalo's 9-minute, 1-second touchdown drive to open up the second half is the team's longest touchdown drive since a 10-minute drive on November 7th, 2016 at Seattle. Buffalo finished 7 for 13 on third down. That's 54%, and 3 for 4 on fourth down, 75% if you're keeping track at home. Buffalo recorded 74 total plays to Las Vegas is 39. To put that into perspective, Buffalo's time of possession was 40 minutes, 4 seconds. Las Vegas time of possession was 19 minutes and 56 seconds. Can't score if you're not in the field. Tight end Dawson Knox, 3 catches for 5 targets for 10 yards and 1 touchdown. Not a huge deal, but this is important because it is his 20th career touchdown reception, which ties him with Jay Remersma for the second most receiving touchdowns in a career by a Buffalo tight end, trailing only Pete Metzelaars, who has 25 career receiving touchdowns. Looking over now at the other two running backs, John, real quick before we move to the defense.
Sure.
The supporting cast that is really going to help out this offense, really going to help out James Cook as well. First off, I'm going to flip him around here. Damian Harris, 7 carries for 33 yards and a touchdown. He looked dynamic with the ball in his hands. He also recorded his first career kickoff return in this game, a 41-yard return. But again, he was very decisive, very succinct, and knew exactly where he wanted to go and how he would get there. And then there's old faithful running back Latavius Murray, 6 carries for 22 yards and a touchdown with 2 catches on 2 targets for 9 yards. It's his first touchdown as a member of the Buffalo Bills. Same with Damian Harris. But the thing about Latavius Murray that the Buffalo Bills have been missing for a very long time, he is a downhill running wrecking ball, which I think this offense has been missing. Something that can really break down the inner workings of the opposing team's defensive line, get them exhausted. You bring in James Cook to kind of thunder and lightning, if you will. Mm-hmm. Cool thing about Latavius Murray here with his first touchdown, he is now 3 touchdowns away from extending his streak, which he currently possesses the longest active streak in the National Football League of seasons with at least 4+ rushing touchdowns. That sits at 8 seasons. If he gets 3 more rushing touchdowns, which I gotta think he's going to, that will extend to 9, obviously. But
I would have to imagine. But that's all great. And again, something that the Buffalo Bills have been missing for several years now. Devin Singletary was he the guy? Is he the guy? Is he this? And then you bring in this piece and that piece and this. Now it seems but for at least 1 week, the running back game really, really, really stepped up and supported the Bills in this win. And I think that definitely, Josh Allen's play was good for sure. Don't get me wrong, especially in comparison to week 1, but to have that kind of support that he had behind him in the back position, very, very big.
And I certainly think too that, not to speak ill of the dead here, but Devin Singletary had good games, but then when you wanted him to build off of that, there was just almost nothing there. So you're going to want to see James Cook build off of this next weekend, which we will highlight here shortly. But
yeah, they certainly play, if you take away all the touchdowns from the running backs, the Bills obviously played good enough to win. Quick math there for you. But
thank you.
In the same, that's got to be a little bit more consistent though. So hopefully as the weeks go on, the coaching staff, particularly Ken Dorsey, begins to, starts to implement a bit more of a balance with the run and let Josh kind of focus on just passing or extending the play a bit to get the wide open guy and have that run pass option. It will open so many doors for this defense, this offense that these types of wins could become the norm with the appropriate strategy there.
And John, we buried the lead kind of there, which is you can't score if you're not on the field. So being able to do this against Oakland, could you imagine the Buffalo Bills doing this against a Kansas City where, hey, Mahomes had, 6 drives, 6 drives. That was it the entire game.
Well, are you kidding me? If they would have done this against the Jets, they would have been 2-0.
Yeah. I mean,
they didn't do that. And I know the Jets defense is good. And the Cowboys were just freaking, they're loaded on all sides.
You saw too, John. I sent you that link about, it wasn't really a conspiracy theory. It was more of just hey, check this out. And you can see multiple replays where Josh Allen bounces his head off the turf in a whiplash fashion, which normally will result in a concussion, as we've seen throughout football. You see the look on his face. You wonder, hey, maybe he wasn't all there because maybe he was taking a few too many hits, bouncing his head off the turf, and no one just caught it. But again, it's one of those things where you're going to look back on it, and will the game in Orchard Park later this season be different? Probably, but we'll see.
I'm sure it will be, but hopefully it'll be different because the Bills actually use their running backs in running things, and that Josh Allen doesn't have to use his legs and be subject to possibly smashing, hitting his head as many times as he did.
Absolutely.
Of course, there's the caveat that they could just whomever the opposing defenses could just zone in specifically on Josh Allen and aim to push him or knock him down or wherever they can, but which defenses have done in the past, but it becomes increasingly harder to do if you're handing off the ball 15, 20, 25 times a game instead of 5, 10 maybe.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was a masterclass for the Bills on offense. on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of having a masterclass, so the defense, man, again, that's our second of the three big things here. Real quick, we can run down the defense. They made up for last week, John. Buffalo allowed 55 rushing yards on 15 total carries across 4 Raiders players. Get this, running back Josh Jacobs, 9 carries for -2 yards. His longest carry was 3 yards. Last season, he led the NFL with 1,653 rushing yards, according to ESPN. This is the first time since at least 1970, so since the NFL-AFL merger, that the reigning NFL, I'm pretty sure it was 1970, that the reigning NFL rushing champion finished a game with negative rushing yards. The Bills defense honed in on him and locked him down. Linebacker Terrell Bernard.
Could you imagine if you had him on your fantasy team? Who in Wolfe and Steiner had him?
I'd have to check and see. I think it's my buddy John from work.
He had to be pissed.
He's a big Raiders fan. Well, here's the thing too. I'll just kind of give you a little insight. I'm in a guillotine league with Brayton, a friend of the podcast, friend of the network, and so after every week, the lowest scoring team overall, like cumulative from the season, gets eliminated. So the one team that got eliminated this week, understandably, had Josh Jacobs on it. Sure. So I'm like, okay, I have $1,000 to spend all season. How much money do I want to spend on a guy who just had -2 yards? But then I look at my team, and my running backs are shot because you start off with, I think, 19 or 20 teams. So the depth is very shallow. So you just kind of got to take it for what it's worth and say that probably won't happen again.
Right. Yeah, it probably won't, but still, the fact that it did, kudos to the defensive strategy there, because 9 carries for -2 yards as a game stat, you were locked down on that. They must have, like, legit, they must have had some kind of intel that Jimmy Garoppolo and the receiving core there was not going to do amount to much. Because to be able to shut down Josh Jacobs in the manner that they did says, we only plan for the run game. You guys don't have a passing game at all.
Yeah, I mean, and when they did have a passing game, the Buffalo Bills also stopped that. I mean, Terrell Bernard, linebacker, had 6 total tackles with 3 solo tackles, 1 pass defense, 1 interception, which is his first career interception. And then Old Faithful, All-Pro linebacker Matt Milano, 4 tackles, 3 solo with 1 pass deflection and 1 interception, which goes in the books as his 10th career pick. He has now recorded an interception in 3 straight regular season games. And get this, John, per ESPN, from 2022 to 2023, Matt Milano is the only player in the NFL with 5+ interceptions and 7+ tackles for loss. He has 5 picks and 13 tackles for loss in that time frame. Now, not all was well with the Buffalo Bills defense. Micah Hyde, safety, left with a hamstring injury, did not return, was questionable to return at the time. Same with Leonard Floyd, defensive end Leonard Floyd, had an ankle injury, left the game, did not return, was questionable to return. But at that point, there's no point in risking it because the game was so far in hand. But the defense, again, showed up, did their job, and the Buffalo Bills had an incredible victory on Sunday.
Absolutely, they did. Again, all in all, for the team, just a overall, like, solid execution on all 3 areas of the game. There's not really much to write home about in terms of, like, the negative feedback, aside from what we've already covered with, like, Josh Allen and that bonehead dive that he did to, troll his friend or whatever. But I mean, offense, defense, special teams, coaching, everything was top notch. Again, the Josh Allen dive and that fan that crapped himself and put himself, those are really the negative highlights of this past Sunday, at least from my vantage point.
And I guess the fact that that's your highlight, I love it. So what we're going to do, John, we're going to throw it to commercial break. We're going to bring it right back here. We've got some exciting news to share, but also we're going to wrap up. We'll wrap up not week 1. We're going to wrap up week 2. So, hey, take a quick commercial break here. We'll be more. Hi, let's try this again.
We'll be more what?
Yeah. We'll be back right after this quick commercial break with more Trust the Podcast here on the Gear Radio Network.
Yeah.
And we're back here. Trust the Podcast, our third of the 3 big things, John, wrapping up week 2. This segment went so well last week. We're bringing it back this week with a little bit extra spice, no pun intended, around the NFL. Brought to you.
Can I read this one? You read Puck Luck.
Brother.
Can I read this one?
Take it. Take the wheel.
Wrapping up week 2 around the NFL on Trust the Podcast is brought to you by Go Frost Yourself. Located in Rochester, New York, Go Frost Yourself does what other local bakeries do not. They bake from scratch, creating recipes themselves and using the best fresh ingredients that they can find to create delicious flavors for customers daily. Molly and Jen have worked tirelessly to create what Go Frost Yourself has become today, and their passion can be tasted in the items they bake. When you find yourself looking for an item for a special occasion, or maybe you just want to try their incredible cinnamon rolls, if you're local, you can visit Go Frost Yourself storefront at 2544 Ridgeway Avenue. Number A, I'm guessing that's Suite A.
That would be Suite A, yes.
Suite A, yeah, you didn't write Suite there. You just wrote the pound sign there. Or gofrostyourself.com. Again, around the NFL, brought to you by Go Frost Yourself. I've known Molly for many years. I met her father in wrestling. Her father, the legendary Hall of Famer Mad Dog Bobby Rogers. So it's really cool to see Go Frost Yourself as a sponsor here. And also, hi, Molly and Jen.
Yeah, they are they're good friends of the podcast. I actually, breaking down the fourth wall, first off, made their website for them, which made this connection much easier.
Oh, nice.
But also I have spent some of my hard-earned money at their facility because all of their stuff is absolutely incredible. It's literally to die for.
It is to die for. I don't know.
So,
Ellie Knight, what do you say to that? Yeah.
So
okay.
I wrote this also at 3:00 in the morning, breaking down the fourth wall because I was wide awake. So I put in #pound A because I knew I was going to say Sweet A. I wasn't expecting you to read it. So, hey, I do like a good little swerve every so often.
Yeah, swerve like Strickland, except not AEW.
Yeah, speaking of swerves, not so surprising swerves here. The Los Angeles Chargers, they lose to Tennessee 27-24 in overtime. John, they've scored 58 points this season, have 0 turnovers, and are 0-2. In the Super Bowl era, 32 other teams have scored 50-plus points and committed no turnovers in the first 2 games. The Chargers, in 2023, are the only team to lose both games. So, at some point in time, their head coach has to be fired because they are wasting that team. They're wasting Justin Herbert. I'm just going to go on record and say it. That guy should have not even gotten on the plane in Nashville. That's absolutely embarrassing.
Yeah.
Their performance is absolutely embarrassing. Yeah. We talked about it earlier this year that they've scored the most points under Justin Herbert, but also allowed the most points under Justin Herbert. I don't think much more needs to be said there than, dude, your seat, if your seat ain't red hot, white hot at this point, I think you may have lost feeling in your ass cheeks because.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's crazy to me because, like, I don't know, that Chargers team, they're very weird. Like, they're really good. They could be really, really good. But for some reason, they're just not.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly a fair way to put it.
I mean, I can't quite put my finger on it. I've seen enough of their games. I've seen enough of Justin Herbert to believe that he is the real deal. That team from top to bottom could compete with anybody. It's very clearly the coaching.
I was going to say they lack
that's the big disconnect. There is you have all that talent and you're not doing and nothing is coming of it. It's definitely up top.
To not sound like a 75-year-old man who watches Fox News daily, this team just kind of lacks the gumption on defense, I think. They don't have it. They just don't have it, you know?
You know what it is? Something they don't have.
Precisely. The New York Giants, speaking of not having it, man, they started off the game against the Cardinals absolutely horrifically.
Oh my goodness.
They start out their season becoming the first team since the 1989 Pittsburgh Steelers to allow 54 or more unanswered points to start the season. They trailed, John, at one point 28-7, but don't worry because the New York Giants overcame a 21-point deficit, marking the largest comeback victory for the Giants since 1949, which oddly enough also came against the Cardinals.
Look at that.
And this is the biggest lead the Cardinals have blown since 2011. That was October 30th at Baltimore. Also, they blew a 21-point lead that game. For the Cardinals, though, aw shucks, because let's be honest, their head coach is a dork. And nothing against their quarterback, Josh Dobbs, but they acquired Josh Dobbs a week before the season and cut Colt McCoy, who probably could have won them a few games. I mean, Josh Dobbs probably will too. But we all know the goal in Arizona this year is to tank for Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr., or maybe even both if they end up with both of those draft picks. So,
well,
again,
I'll just say this, and for the benefit of Atlanta Falcons fans, even though there was a 28-3 reference made recently at a game that Matt Ryan was calling, we can at least say for this week, Cardinals blew a 28-7 lead.
That's fair. I like that. I like that a lot. That's absolutely fair.
Mm-hmm.
The Denver Broncos, speaking of blowing things, dude, Russell Wilson, man, I don't know. He looked really good on Sunday. Denver led 21-14 at the half, end up losing 35-33 on an incredible last-second Hail Mary touchdown by Russell Wilson, followed by a failed 2-point conversion attempt where Jerry Jeudy was wide open and he missed him, he being Russell Wilson, which someone had said Russell Wilson's fear of the goal line continues. But get this, John, the reason, because again, I don't just say these things just to kind of blow smoke up people's asses. I want to try to make sure I'm telling you cool things because there's cool reasoning behind it. So Denver led the game at halftime. Denver has now lost 9 straight games in which they led at the half, which marks the longest streak in NFL history.
The longest streak in NFL history? Did you say?
Yeah.
Oh, that's that's not a very good streak. That's not a very good thing to have.
I honestly John, real quick, when you asked me if it were a streak and I said, yeah, I was 99.9% sure you had a fart noise.
Oh no, I did not. I actually was reading that. I actually got sidetracked a little bit because I saw that thing you forwarded over the commercial break with the SFL and USFL with a merger, and it's like, okay, cool. A merger between two football. Honestly, yeah. Well,
the goal, the goal is gonna be to make that the league, and then that league obviously becomes the feeder league to the NFL.
Absolutely, and it should be.
John, no better transition than that to our next, our second to last thing here. I'm sorry to jump in and take over, but this is a great story. Even though it is a Cowboy story, we'll let it slide here. Kicker Brandon Aubrey has not missed on 13 straight kicks after missing his first ever try on a PAT against the Giants. He is 7 for 7 on field goals this year and 5 for 6 on PATs on the season. If you have not heard his story, sit back, take a sip of water, and just follow along here. This is incredible. Brandon Aubrey played 4 years at Notre Dame playing soccer. He was selected in the first round, 21st overall of the 2017 MLS Super Draft by Toronto FC. He played for Toronto FC 2, in the third tier of the MLS, scored 0 goals in 21 appearances. He was released by the team at the end of the season, at the end of the 2017 season. Brandon Aubrey then signed with Bethlehem Steel FC in the USL for the 2018 season. No goals in 27 appearances, was released at the end of the 2018 season. He then went on to become a software engineer shortly thereafter with his degree from Notre Dame. Him and his wife were watching a football game in 2019, and after a missed field goal, his wife lamented, quote, "You could do that." So what did he do? From 2019 to 2022, Aubrey worked with a kicking coach to become a high-level place kicker. Aubrey was drafted by the Birmingham Stallions in the 2022 USFL draft, making his professional football debut on April 16th, 2022. After making 86.5% of his field goals and 96.6% of his PATs, and also grabbing back-to-back USFL championships in 2022 and 2023, kicker Brandon Aubrey signed with the Dallas Cowboys on July 6, 2023. So again, things we weren't seeing before the USFL and the XFL. When players lost their jobs in the NFL and went away, they would go away for good. The USFL, the XFL, despite their quirkiness, despite their this works, no, that doesn't work, whatever, it is working because stories like this are able to happen, which is absolutely improbable, incredible, unbelievable. Any word you can come up with, it would fit this story, but it is so much fun to follow.
And it fits to why there is such a place for a spring football league. Although I know that, in the NFL offseason, even with, the NBA and NHL going on, and then Major League Baseball starting not too long after the NFL season ends, after the Super Bowl, there's still a market for football. It may, the one thing the networks try to do is they're trying to make it as big of a market as the NFL in the fall and college football, which is just, you can't do that. It's not feasible. When nicer weather comes out, the last thing people want to do is sit at a football game. They want to go out and they want to do things. But in the same, having these spring leagues here as a viable option is great for the game of football as a whole, because it gives that proverbial stepping stone to, not only have players that may have fizzled out of the NFL to give them another shot at their dream, work on whatever they need to work on in hopes to get back. You saw that with the St. Louis Battlehawks, and AJ McCarron was a big story with the XFL last year. He gets looked at, and almost immediately after every championship game, whether it's the USFL or the XFL, you see these names that are brought up to training camp to work out with teams and be put on there. What was his name in Carolina? PJ something was
PJ Walker.
PJ Walker, yeah, he was a name that was pretty big in the USFL and ended up starting a couple games last year for the Panthers. These leagues are important. It's just the networks have really got to stop trying to equate them to NFL games, because the audience is not going to go on. But I mean, to even expand on that, not just from the player aspect, but trialing different things out rule change wise. These can serve as the leagues to do that, almost like how minor league baseball is with Major League Baseball. The pitch clock was a very, very big thing that was introduced in minor league baseball several years ago and only made its way to the majors this year. And it was a very, very positive change, as you saw game times going down, more action happening, faster pace of play, things like that. They had, Major League Baseball has the minor leagues to kind of toy around with those things. And in the same, this too could be what the NFL needs to be able to trial different overtime rules, trial different kickoff rules. Like the XFL has the different kickoff rules there. I've read a lot of different articles that suggest that the NFL has been looking into that and possibly implementing something like that for the big league in one of the future seasons. So I think, that with this story here that you had just mentioned with Brandon Aubrey, I mean, that's a picture perfect story as to the importance of what these spring leagues can do. And if the NFL, if they can get the big brother NFL to kind of help cushion them and keep them alive, I think it would be a great thing just for the game of football overall.
Well, you've got a couple other successful names that just kind of, I'm looking through the list here that jump out at me. First off, you've got Kevontae Turpin, the kick returner for the Dallas Cowboys as well. You've got Ben DiNucci, who is a backup quarterback for the Denver Broncos.
Oh
now.
Yeah, Ben DiNucci. He was a big one for Seattle and XFL.
Yeah, again, it's. I think the NFL or college football really saved face, because the NBA is kind of going to the point where college basketball does not pay players, but players are going overseas to make money to play professionally because the talent level is better. They get better development, or they're going to the G League because of the same thing. Right, so the idea would be that the NCAA wants to get ahead of that, which they clearly have with paying players, which is not a bad idea at all. But if that hadn't happened, I think furthermore, a USFL, XFL type league would be important, because it only takes one player, man. It only takes one top prospect to go, wait, you're telling me I can go play in this league for a year or two, make cash, like straight cash, and then go to the NFL?
And don't get me wrong, excuse me, it's not NFL money that they're making, but it's still, decent enough livable money.
Yeah, I mean, it's better. Look, it's better than. I know it's changed. Again, it's changed.
I apologize. I was choking on my spit there and lost that battle.
That's okay. That's okay. I was going to say it's something where, like with the NCAA, they weren't paying their players; they were making money hand over fist. The players are getting paid a lot more money now. Some players who will never make it in the league, but they're able to play college football and make the most of that. I mean, there are people who play in the XFL and the USFL that will never make it to the NFL, but they're still able to chase their dreams, much like guys in minor league baseball. There are guys who play in single A, double A, triple A for 8, 10, 12 years just for the love of the game.
Right.
That's what happens here.
And me as a independent pro wrestler, I mean, I never made it to WWE or AEW or Ring of Honor or any of that, but I've been in the indies for 20 plus years, and it's purely out of love, out of the love for performing, out of love for, being in the ring and performing in front of fans and putting smiles on faces and things like that. It's the same thing. It just, why not? I say.
Absolutely. And just to wrap up here before I look ahead, Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, gets paid again. He will now get $210.6 million between 2023 and 2026, guaranteeing his compensation, giving Mahomes the most money in NFL history over a 4-season span. Well deserved. I don't feel like we need to beat that horse to death.
No, not at all. Not
very easy.
We've said a number of times that no quarterback, no person has meant more to a franchise, arguably, than Josh Allen. I think the argument could be made for Patrick Mahomes in that equation. Yep. There, like he's too important, not only to the franchise, but really to the league. With Brady gone, with Rodgers out, face of the league kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
that's important.
Well, also you want to keep your good players happy, and Mahomes was like the 5th or 6th compensated quarterback, and there's no way anybody's better than him right now.
Oh yeah, it's crazy, but it's crazy how quickly that changed, right? Because every quarterback resets the market.
Yep.
Next year, next offseason, someone's getting paid.
Wait till the salary. Wait till the cap goes up. Same thing's going to happen again. But
yep.
Our look ahead. I don't want to feel like I'm rushing this. I'm sorry, John. Baby duty is calling.
No, that's fine.
So our look ahead. Week 3. Buffalo Bills at the Washington Commanders. Kickoff 1 p.m. on Eastern Time on CBS. Washington 2-0, coming off that aforementioned victory over Denver, 35-33. Yes, Denver. That's right. Because I didn't mention who Denver lost to. That's why. Wow. Yeah. My brain just.
That's okay.
They rallied from a 21-3 deficit to take a 35-24 lead. It is the second biggest comeback in franchise history. Quarterback Sam Howell, 501 passing yards, 3 touches, a pick. Running back Brian Robinson Jr., 37 carries, 146 yards, two touchdowns. He looked good last week as well. John, ESPN's matchup predictor says 73.1% of America believes Buffalo will defeat Washington. My prediction was pretty darn close last week. This week, I'm going to say Buffalo over Washington, 31-13.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. First of all, I appreciate you bringing back the ESPN matchup predictor because I forgot that last week when I used to do it every podcast last year. So thank you for that. I will agree with 73.1% of America. Buffalo's gonna hand Washington their ass, in my opinion, and I'm gonna go by a score of 35-10.
Hey man, that sounds good to me. And guess what? We can wrap up our podcast the new cool way we did last week.
How did we do that?
For John Cimino, I am Ryan Wolfe.
Yeah.
We are Trust the Podcast.
You're not.
We will catch you sometime very soon. Same time, same place, same podcast network. Thanks again for tuning in. And as always, go Bills.
LA Knight, what say you? Yeah.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.